Greetings, everyone out there. Welcome. It is I, Tantus Narraventure, your Lord and Emperor, here at the Dracovin Empire, and once again, welcome. We're talking tabletop. I do it a lot. I talk about tabletop lore, I dive into tabletop topics, I go in, blabber on about stuff, and you come and join me so you can learn about things I'm babbling. If you're joining me live on Twitch, hey, thank you for joining me live on Twitch. If you're joining me on YouTube later on, when this video is put back up on there, also thank you. All of you out there, regardless of where you join me, show great support for the channel. And, you know, the usual spiel of follows on Twitch and subscriptions, liking bells and stuff on YouTube, all that stuff. But my question for today, and for this episode, is going to be related to our topic, Grippli. It's an ancestry in Pathfinder. So have you played a Grippli? I personally haven't played a Grippli, but I have had some friends that have played it in some games that I've been a player in, and also games that I've run. So, a few times I've seen Grippli over the years. And I also make a joke, believe it or not, Grippli. I've made that joke a lot. Also, Grippli being princely is also really fun. Anyway, there's a lot of things about Grippli that are fun, but also a little silly, and I'm going to approach them today with that well, not a complete seriousness, but a bit more of a serious angle about how they actually fit into the Golarion world. Because there is this a little bit of ridiculousness being like amphibian frog people that are kind of tiny. There does come a little bit of that silliness connected to them just from their appearance and the way that they're presented. But we do have to take them as they are a part of Golarion and a part that can be seen seriously, you know, as one that is important as any others. So I usually use the Pathfinder Wikipedia as a basic article, kind of start point, and then I go and research from a number of books to give you the information that we are going to present here. And I'm going to tell you those books, because if you want to dive deeper in, I'm only giving you basic summaries and stuff, including things that you really basically need to know. And I like letting people know, if you want to do some research on your own and dive deeper, hey, there are ways to do it. Anyway, The Blood of the Beast is a great one to start out with. It is a player's companion that gives a lot of information and introduces you to the Grippli. The place that introduces, especially when it comes to first edition, is, of course, Bestiary 2. This is where they were introduced in, like, monster form, but also gave a lot of bits of their society and things like that in there. And then finally, if you're talking about second edition, they're talking a lot more about in the Mwangi Expanse, which is logical. That's where they're from, originally. So that's the Grippli's locations of books that I recommend checking out. The only one that I wasn't able to reference is the Mwangi Expanse here, so anything that was referenced in that book, I have to rely on articles basically talking about. And as I also say, I would recommend Archives of Nethys if you want to look into stats, at least for second edition, and the PSFR DD20 for stats from the first edition for mechanically how to play Grippli. I did an old video about mechanically playing it in the past. I don't remember all my old ancestry videos that I did back in the day. Maybe I'll revisit those one more. But Grippli! We're showing it off here. We got this little Grippli dude here. They're amphibian humanoids. They kind of look very frog-like in their appearance. They are reclusive, very watchful. They are hardened by their nature of existing in the arboreal wilderness of the Mwangi Expanse. Mwangi Expanse is a dangerous and savage place. So as much as they look cute and quiet and simple, they are hardened by that to a great disease. And there is a lot of misconceptions about them, too. They're seen as almost primitive because they do rely on simple tools and cunning. But they also have the ability to shape the land into secluded orchards and hidden causeways that allow them to live peacefully and prosperously. They basically are very good at living with the land that they exist in, and they don't have to have very complex tools or buildings to do that. So they can rely on the simple things. Their intelligence as a group is what drives them in this case. So, as you can see from their image here that I'm showing off here, they're frog people. They are small humanoids that look like tree frogs. They have oversized eyes, large mouths, slender physiques. They're only about 2 feet tall when they are adults, and they're incredible climbers. They have very strong grips. Their large toes afford. Their skin color suits them for camouflage in the jungles of the Mwangi Expanse, their home environments, often having green or brown colorations being the main ones. while those that find themselves in other regions, like some living in wetlands, might have more varied colors, like oranges and blues, and they weigh about 30 pounds. They don't weigh a lot. Well, you're only a 2-foot tall person. It's kind of like a little humanoid. So, if you're a Grippli that becomes an adventurer in the world, well, you're coming from the wilderness or remote regions. You usually would be a hunter, a nomad, a scout. Those are Grippli that adapt to urban environments, usually use their talents like, communications with animals, bounty hunting, herbalists. There are those that take diplomatic roles as emissaries to basically help their people maintain relationships with the other civilizations on Garund. As much as the Mwangi Expanse is relatively uncontrolled, there are civilizations and people that live there and live in the various regions around there. Sometimes easier to get to than others, so it's good to have good relations with those people. They do have a deep connection with nature, seen by their loss of abilities, so many of them actually expound into things such as druids and rangers. And there is some deep musical practices that exist within the Grippli people, so those that find themselves becoming bards, it's not illogical for that others. And again, the last bit, when you're talking about, what kind of classes they kind of become when they become adventurers, they do have some natural agility and some great perceptiveness. Both things that could lead to things like being clerics, monks, or rogues. So you can see there is a wide variety of their natural skills pertain to when it comes to class building. Not that you can build to any class or adventurer as a Grippli, probably plenty of other ones that you can give examples for. But these are the ones that tend to point out the most because they're the ones that most of their abilities pertain to exactly. Alright, taking a drink. So, Grippli. They reproduce via egg laying. A newly hatched Grippli takes about 3 years to mature to adulthood. So unless they meet a violent end, which, again, they live in a very dangerous environment, so it's incredibly possible, Grippli reach an age of around 60, and there are some exceptions that will live as long as a century. So 60 is kind of that natural cap of, high age, but the exceptional ones will live to be up to 100 years old. Pretty decently aged for a being that is basically an adult at 3 years old. They typically hunt and eat giant insects as well as a variety of fruit. So they are omnivorous in that way. And some Grippli of various heritages, depending on where they are, have developed other traits. Things like toxic skin, film covering for their toes to make climbing a little bit better, or even some of them have long tongues of frogs. The majority of all the Grippli on Golarion, the entire planet, hail from the Kava lands, which is a large peninsula in the Mwangi Expanse with jungles. In this wilderness, they've created their own secretive and kind of secluded societies that are tailored to their environments and landscape and makes them suitable for their own domestic needs. They channel spillways for fishing, arrange foliage for hunting game. So it's basically they alter the environment in slight ways to not change the environment majorly, but to allow things to be very easy. Making these little changes which fit in with nature, so it still is very natural, but still allowing for them to have ease, is the kind of skill of a Grippli society. And despite this, though, they do trade with a lot of their neighbors. They are secluded, they're reclusive, but things like metal and gemstones, they don't get for themselves. And there are some that will speak common, but among their own kind, they usually speak a language called, Grippli. So you will find in areas nearby, especially for the Kava lands, Grippli traders in other settlements oftentimes coming to trade what they have for the things they need. One of the most sacred roles amongst their society is that of the Fiend Keeper, a type of medium that serves as a vessel to keep evil spirits from causing any further harm to the tribe. Once infused with this evil spirit, the Fiend Keeper then undertakes a variety of good deeds to try to cleanse the spiritual stain that the dark energy within kind of does. They can sometimes use the blasphemous power of these evil spirits for their own good ends, and this role is usually passed down from generation to generation of the tribe. So if one of your parents was the Fiend Keeper, and, did a bunch of good deeds to kind of purify the fiend, and then you're taking the evil spirit on yourself as your generation do the same. And there's good old Mother Bogween, Grippli. I got her name for that one. In Garund, Grippli are common. In places like the Mwangi Expanse, the Sodden Lands, especially more than anything. But usually because of their natures and stuff and their trades, you could theoretically find Grippli in a lot of other regions within Garund. And with the rise of Anzakin worshipping Chakra across the Expanse, and the increasing colonial pressures, most of the Grippli tribes have migrated west towards the Sodden Lands. And again, most now dwell within the Kava Lands. They are seldomly found outside the Western Garund. Not impossible, but seldomly nowadays. That's kind of what I was talking about. There are a few enclaves located in the Verduin Forest, and they live in close cooperation with the Wildwood Druids. If you do not know about the Verduin Forest, just a quick summary. That's in Avastia. So, some migrated even across the Inner Sea. A few enclaves of them. That's really the only place that they're commonly found in Avastian, otherwise not really at all. So maybe around those nations that are connected to and around the Verduin Forest, you might also see a few of them. But again, the connection to the Druids and the help of them kind of help them out when they've moved in there. There are some Grippli that live in the Vashamau jungles of TNZ. So that's an interesting thing to say, that there are some in even that far away. It's basically the ruins and these deadly jungles that researchers have kind of gleaned the Grippli race's origin. It seems as though the Grippli were imported to Golarion from somewhere across the stars. Where that is, kind of hard to say. That's a reference from the Inner Sea Races book. I'm just going to let you know if you want to look into that more. But the Gripplis of Valashmai exhibit disproportionate strength for their small size, and this can be partially attributed to their war painters who are able to apply magical pigments to their fellow warriors. And that's about it for Grippli that we have right now. The in-depth look in them from the Mwangi Expanse, again, it's an unfortunate thing that, I don't have a lot of the new modern books that I kind of reference a bit of extra information that isn't provided online for that book. But I would definitely recommend, if you want to look into Grippli more, check out the Mwangi Expanse book. You might get a little bit more in-depth about these topics, but I've basically gone over everything you need to know about the basics of them. They are beings that try to find a way to live, in a way, symbiotically with the natural region they're in. It doesn't mean that they don't change it, but they change it in ways that benefit them without harming the nature around them, making it easy to capture fish, hunt, to find fruits and the fruits that they enjoy eating, places where the large insects they want to capture and devour gather more. These patterns that they use in the regions that they move into make them very adaptable to various forest and jungle habitats around the world. And yeah, though their main population is in Mwangi, that evidence that, maybe they came from the Vashamau jungle and maybe they came from the stars are things that exist. But there is this kind of question about, the information there. It's in the ruins. Is that accurate? There isn't an actual known history of where the Grippli naturally came from. We have these bits and pieces that tell us a story, but not a complete one. And, yeah, we see them in a couple other places outside of Mwangi, but they really, really kind of found their grip and their grounds in the Expanse. But even so, people there are just threatening them now. The expansion of colonial pressures, so people moving in, and of course the Charaka, the ape men of the Mwangi Expanse. Ape men is a vulgar term for them, but that's kind of what it's supposed to be like the description kind of about them. But nonetheless, they are the Charaka, and they've been expanding their reach within Mwangi, along with those, colonial people from Avastia kind of moving in, trying to settle the regions here, trying to spread their influence from places like Cheliax, Taldor, and a lot of the other newer nations in those regions. There's a lot of things going on that are not necessarily good for the Grippli. And adapting to the best they can is what they do, but still, what will this mean for a relatively small and rare species that is out there? It's not like they only have one small enclave. They are technically global with 3 regions that they kind of find themselves. And yes, they have a pretty decent population. But in comparison to many other humanoids that exist within Golarion, they are relatively small. And honestly speaking, small. It's been seen in a lot of these more civilized worlds how, civilized countries and areas, small beings get mistreated a lot. Halflings, gnomes have seen their fair share of mistreatment, and it's the unfortunate thing that Grippli, as they more connect up with urban environments, will they find the same thing? Will a Grippli society that tries to have to find a way to move into something of civilized find a way to keep itself? I don't know. But the changes in Golarion and the changes that may be affecting the Grippli are just one of many things that are going on. And growing, evolving, interesting world that's being shown to us through the Golarion. The Grippli themselves, though, will do their best. They are, honestly speaking, a rugged people. A people that know how to survive. They might not be great on the offensive side, but they know that survival and ways to get around things and ways to adapt. Their ability to do that, and especially live in a lot of those wild places in the world successfully, mean that no matter what happens, Grippli will probably push through, even though they won't have those numbers. Anyway, that's enough. I can kind of chat on about Grippli a little bit here more, but I think that summarizes my thoughts and the information I hope you've learned about them. If you want to see more things of mine, I do a lot of tabletop-related stuff that goes usually onto Twitch, ends up on YouTube. Live play of Pathfinder 1st Edition every Wednesday at 9 p.m., discussing tabletop Saturdays at 6 p.m. Tabletop discussions like this one that I have, I stream it live on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Tuesdays and Thursdays, usually in the afternoon between 1 and 2, maybe a little later, maybe a little earlier, depending on my schedule. And Saturdays around 11 o'clock if I'm going to have it, because I need to have the exact around then. Pathfinder Golarion stuff is on Thursdays. And then the World Darkness stuff tends to be on Saturdays. And Tuesdays, correct. I do other streams, gaming streams. Those are Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. I have social media, Discord, Twitter. I post cat pics from my 2 kittens that are in the household, and also, just updates on the schedule. Alright, I'm going to get going. I'm going to say to all of you out there, I hope you enjoyed learning about the Grippli, and until next time we chat, I'm going to bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.